It started with the screaming, wet, raw, and impossible to ignore, echoing down the hill like the night itself was being torn open. The sound came from behind the locked black gates of Horror Hill Hospital, the building that wasn't supposed to be real. That was what people told themselves in Blood Moon Hollow when they heard the ambulances drive up there after midnight. That was what they whispered when neighbors came home different. No one climbed the hill after dark. The gates were always locked. No one saw deliveries. No staff ever walked into town. But somehow the lights were always on, even when the power went out. The house on hallowed Vine Street never slept, even when the rest of Blood Moon Hollow went dark, swallowed in shadow and silence. The crooked Victorian house near the woods pulsed with soft candlelight and whispers, like it was alive. If you stood outside long enough, you'd swear the windows blinked. Ouija had long since accepted that her house was haunted. The ghost in question, a snarky former jazz singer from the 1920s named Edgar, was currently floating upside down in her bathroom mirror, wearing her pink sunglasses and judging her eyeliner. Smoky eye? In July? Sweetheart, it's giving corpse cosplay. Edgar, the ghost in question, tilted his head and hovered beside the mirror. Ouija flipped him off with a lazy grin, dark lipstick perfect, and storm cloud eyes sharp. She liked being weird, loved it in fact. Her mom named her Ouija for a reason, and Luna Nightshade, resident town witch and divorcee with skin like porcelain and secrets like tombs, never did anything by accident. I am going for corpse, Ouija muttered, lining her eyes in black with surgical precision. It's Horror Movie Monday. It's Tuesday, darling. Every day is Monday when you're cursed to live in this town. Ouija Nightshade, 18, sharp-tongued, born under a blood moon during a lightning storm, looked herself over once more and smirked. Torn tights, combat boots, band tee with something demonic on it. Her mother always said she dressed like the apocalypse was fashionable, which in Blood Moon Hollow wasn't exactly far off. Where are you off to, Morticia? Edgar asked, crossing ghostly arms. Blaze called, says his stepdad's acting weird. Might be nothing, might be werewolf-level drama. Either way, I'm in. Ouija's mother, Luna, appeared in the doorway. She moved like silk through shadow, flowing black robes, silver rings on every finger, a black cat named Hex perched on her shoulder like a demon familiar. Take your salt charm, Luna said, holding out a small pendant with a vial of gray-pink crystal dust, just in case. You're so dramatic, Mom. Luna smiled softly. You say that now. You'll thank me when something tries to eat your soul. Ouija kissed her mother's cheek and stepped out into the heavy summer air. The wind curled through the trees like it carried secrets. Behind her, the house sighed. 3:03 a.m. The red digits of Blaze's digital alarm clock glowed like an open wound, casting an eerie red light across his Return of the Living Dead poster taped to the wood-paneled wall. The ticking from his Swatch watch echoed louder than it should have in the silence. Blood Moon Hollow never truly slept, but tonight it felt like something was watching. He pushed aside the scratchy gremlin's bedsheets and stood barefoot on the cold linoleum. Somewhere down the hall, the floor groaned, long, slow, and wrong. The air smelled sour, metallic, like wet pennies and sweat. Blaze crept to the doorway, careful not to knock over the stack of cassette tapes beside his bed. A mix he'd made with Ouija just last weekend sat at the top. Apocalypse Bops Volume 3. Scrawled in black Sharpie. He eased his bedroom door open. The hallway was lit by the faint static glow of the old Zenith TV in the living room, except no one had turned it on. His mother had left a note before heading to the late night shift at the diner. "Be good. Your stepdad needs rest." That was all. Except the thing in the hallway wasn't resting. The master bedroom door was half open. Inside, light flickered. A low growl hummed through the crack like a cassette stuck on rewind. He stepped closer, slowly. And then he saw him. His stepfather, shirtless, swaying in the center of the room. His back moved, convulsing, bones writhing beneath skin like a film melting in reverse. His silhouette flickered in and out of the CRT static light pouring from the living room, and for one horrific moment, Blaze saw the outline of something with claws. Then the man turned around. His face was off, his jaw too wide, his pupils blown out and glowing yellow like two dying flashlight beams. His breath came in ragged wheezes. "You shouldn't be awake," he rasped, voice gurgling like a warped tape deck. And then he lunged. Blaze bolted, crashing through the hallway. Behind him, claws tore into the wallpaper, ripping through the faded floral print like tissue. He didn't stop to grab his sneakers or his Walkman. He just ran. Down the cracked front steps, across the street slick with leftover summer rain. Porch lights flickered. Somewhere a dog howled. Somewhere else a phone rang endlessly inside an empty house. Only one place felt safe. Ouija's house, the old one on Hallowed Vine. 10 minutes later, Blaze was pounding on the door, barefoot and bleeding. The porch creaked under his weight, neon green porch light flickering like it was possessed. The door opened slowly. Ouija stood there wearing a long Misfits tee, knee-high socks, and a frown that said I was already awake. The purple haze of incense swirled behind her. A Polaroid camera hung around her neck like a weapon. "I think my stepdad's a werewolf," Blaze whispered. There was a long beat. Then, from inside the shadowed living room, Edgar's disembodied voice echoed. "Well, that explains the hair in the sink." The rain was falling sideways when Ouija cut the wire on the hospital's old crematorium door. "Remind me again why this place even has a crematorium," Freya whispered, hugging her denim jacket tighter. "Isn't this supposed to be a hospital?" "It's Horror Hill," Jareth said, clicking on his flashlight. "No one knows what it's supposed to be." Ouija's boots hit the cracked tile first. The hallway inside smelled like rotting antiseptic and melted VHS tape. Everything buzzed, old fluorescent lights twitching on like they were waking from a nightmare. The air was wet, unmoving. "I saw a building like this in a John Carpenter movie once," Blaze muttered, eyes darting around the moldy gray walls. "Everyone died." Freya smacked his arm. "Cool, super helpful." They moved like shadows. Ouija led, sharp-eyed, her camera clicking pictures that probably wouldn't develop. Her Polaroid always came out warped here. Smudged faces, blank corners, streaks of red light that weren't in the room when she took them. "This place hasn't had a working staff since like 79, Jareth whispered. "But the power's still on. You know what that means?" Ouija turned. "That someone or something wants it on." They reached the basement stairs just after 2 a.m. The stairwell buzzed like a dying arcade machine, casting long bars of flickering light over every step. A rusted gurney lay sideways at the bottom, wheels spinning like someone had just run. Ouija's breath fogged the air. Then they heard it. A voice. No, not quite a voice. a chanting, low and mechanical, repeating itself like a broken recording. Mutation successful, specimen incomplete, begin transfusion. They ducked into the basement corridor, pressing themselves against the cold tile walls. Freya gasped. Behind a window smeared with dried blood, they saw them. Bodies, people strapped to gurneys, arms convulsing, skin bubbling. One man's ribcage had been split open and stitched back with barbed wire. A woman's teeth were growing, layer upon layer, jagged like a shark's. In the corner, something with no face was twitching violently. Then, the door creaked open, and he entered. Dr. Frankenhorror. He wasn't what they expected. Not tall, not bulky, but precise. His long white coat hung perfectly pressed, stitched with black thread like Frankenstein's monster. His head was shaved, skull marked with surgical lines. His eyes were empty, not glowing, just gone. He moved like he was gliding. His voice was cold as metal. Another trial, another attempt. We are so close to perfection. One of the patients began to scream. He didn't flinch. He just smiled, slow and awful, and pressed a button on the wall. The screaming stopped. A hiss of gas. The gurney shuddered. Something grew inside the patient's skin. Bones snapped as if chewed from within. Freya gagged, backing away too fast. Her shoe squeaked. Dr. Frankenhorror's head jerked toward the hallway. Silence. Then, "You shouldn't be here." His voice boomed like it had been waiting for them. The lights flickered, doors slammed. The teens ran. They didn't stop running until they burst out of the emergency exit, lungs burning, clothes soaked in sweat and rain. Blaze fell to his knees. Freya sobbed. Jareth vomited into the dead grass. We just stood, eyes fixed on the hospital behind them. The windows glowed soft green, like a beacon. "I think he's turning people," she whispered, "into monsters." Blaze looked up at her. "Why?" The wind answered for her, howling across the trees, a cold October wind. 1 month until Halloween. The days began to rot like pumpkins left too long on a porch. By the first week of October, Blood Moon Hollow wasn't right anymore. Not in the little ways you could ignore, like dying leaves or that heavy stillness after a storm. No, this was deeper. The sky never looked blue, the birds stopped singing, and no one would talk about the green glow that hovered over Horror Hill at night like a radioactive halo. People started changing. First, it was Mrs. Langston, the music teacher. She returned to school after a routine checkup at the hospital with eyes like fogged-over mirrors and fingers that twitched when no one was watching. She spoke slower, smiled wider, played music that sounded more like weeping than melody. Then the cashier at VHS and Chill started talking in perfect Latin. And by mid-October, no one was going outside after dark. We just sat cross-legged in her backyard, ringed by half-melted black candles, a Walkman in her lap playing The Cure on low volume. She hadn't told the others yet, not even Blaze, but something was happening to her. It started the night they escaped the hospital, a pulse in her veins, a buzzing in her ears. Now, the fire flickered when she got angry. The shadows leaned toward her when she stood in silence too long. And sometimes she heard people's thoughts like whispers trapped in water. "Your blood's waking up," Luna said that morning, sitting beside her in her purple velvet robe with a tarot card tucked behind one ear. "The family line runs deep. My gifts come from the stars. Yours come from the in-between." "The in-between?" Ouija asked. "The place where ghosts wait and monsters are born." Blaze had his own nightmare. He hadn't slept in days. Not really. Not since he watched his stepfather peel his skin back like a costume in the moonlight. The man looked normal again now. Too normal. But he never blinked, never ate, and he always stood outside Blaze's door from 2:55 to 3:05 a.m., just breathing. Last night, Blaze found shredded teeth in the sink, not human, not quite animal. Freya swore she saw her older sister walking backward through the living room mirror at midnight. Jareth's reflection hadn't matched him for 3 days. The group gathered in Ouija's living room on October 24th. Rain tapped at the windows like fingers. Edgar hovered over the couch, dramatically wrapped in a vintage shawl he'd stolen from Luna's attic. "I do not approve of confronting the undead with no backup plan," the ghost whined. "Your generation has no flair for drama. You go in, you get killed. In my time, we held seances, wore pearls, died fabulously." "We have a week," Ouija said, eyes burning with something ancient. "1 week until Halloween, and if we don't figure out how to stop him, this town turns into a monster mash massacre." Blaze flipped through the Polaroids Ouija had taken inside the hospital basement. "He's creating an army. All those people, they're not patients. They're experiments." Freya's voice trembled. "How do we fight him?" The lights flickered. Luna stepped into the room, black candles igniting behind her with no match in sight. "With the truth," she said, voice low. "With spells, with courage, and with power. His kind fears what it cannot control." Ouija stood slowly, firelight flickering in her eyes. "I think it's time we gave him something to be afraid of." Somewhere deep in the walls of Horror Hill Hospital, a switch flipped. A tank hissed, and the stitched mouth of a new creature opened for the first time. As the countdown to Halloween ticked 1 second closer to the end of the world, the sky over Blood Moon Hollow turned the color of spoiled milk the morning of October 31st. It was quiet, too quiet. No kids in costumes, no trick-or-treat decorations, no jack-o'-lanterns flickering from porches. It was like the town was holding its breath, like every house, every window, every soul was waiting for something horrible to wake up. And it did. At exactly 3:33 p.m., every phone in town rang once and then died. Every radio turned to static. The VHS store television sets glitched, showing grainy black and white footage of twitching bodies strapped to gurneys. And then, that voice. "This is the final transmission. Happy Halloween, Blood Moon Hollow. Dr. Frankenhorror." Inside the Nightshade house, Ouija stood in front of the mirror, zipping her black leather jacket over her pentagram tee. Her hands glowed faintly, not with light, but with force. It moved under her skin like magma. The dead had begun whispering to her when she slept. Her dreams were drenched in blood, symbols, fire. "You're not just a witch, are you?" Blaze asked from the doorway, dressed in torn jeans and a chain-slashed denim vest. "You're something else." Ouija looked at him and gave a crooked smile. "I'm what happens when you name your daughter after a spirit board." Luna entered the room in a full ritual cloak, her eyes like thunder clouds. "We have until midnight. After that, the full transformation completes. Every patient in that hospital will become a soldier." "Soldier," Freya whispered. "For what?" "For him," Luna said. and then the house shook. The hospital loomed in the distance like a rotting cathedral. Lightning cracked above it in purple forks. The front gates, always locked, were now wide open. A welcome, a dare. They walked in together. Ouija, Blaze, Freya, Jareth. Luna behind them, humming an ancient tune, salt bag in one hand, a dagger wrapped in black thread in the other. Edgar floated above, dramatically sipping tea he couldn't actually drink. "I always imagined dying in a theater, not a slaughterhouse," the ghost muttered. The inside of Horror Hill Hospital was alive, pulsing lights, blood-wet tiles, gurneys wheeling themselves down the halls, and on the intercom, that smooth nightmare voice. "Welcome back, children. I've prepared something special." They hit the lower levels by 9 p.m. The operating theater was full. Creatures twitched in tanks. A stitched-up vampire hissed behind glass. Something that looked like a wolfman and an electrical transformer thrashed against steel restraints. Then came the scream. From behind the viewing window, Dr. Frankenhorror emerged, floating. His feet no longer touched the ground. His coat hung like it had a mind of its own. Metal tendrils extended from his back like insect legs, sparking, twitching. "You children have meddled far too long," he hissed. "But it's not too late. I can give you immortality. You could be beautiful." Ouija stepped forward, hair lifted by unseen wind, eyes glowing. "I already am," she whispered, and then threw her power forward like a lightning bolt. The theater exploded in light. The final battle was chaos. Freya wielded a silver crowbar dipped in salt. Jareth had loaded an old crossbow with blessed nails. Blaze held off a wereghoul with a fire extinguisher and pure rage. Luna cast spells in an ancient tongue, her power forming a protective circle as Edgar whizzed through the air, knocking over machines and whispering insults. And Ouija. Ouija unleashed hell. She walked through fire, she shattered tanks with screams. The dead rose behind her, echoes of every soul the hospital had claimed. She wasn't just fighting. She was reclaiming. At 11:57 p.m., she faced Frankenhorror alone. His body sparked and split, bones rearranging themselves. One side of his face melted, revealing gears and metal. He lunged. Ouija's power hit him like a tidal wave. He screamed, then vanished in a blast of wind, leaving nothing behind but the sound of a skipping tape and a flickering light. The hospital began to collapse. Luna grabbed her daughter's hand. "Time to go, witchling." They ran. Outside, the moon turned crimson. The teens collapsed in the grass, alive, whole, breathing. The gates slammed shut behind them. Blood Moon Hollow stayed silent. For now. The next day, the hospital was gone, not destroyed, just missing. The lot was empty, no rubble, no smoke, no sign it had ever existed. Ouija stood with her friends at the top of the hill, silent. Then she smiled. "This isn't the end." Blaze blinked. "What do you mean?" She held up a note left on her windowsill that morning, scrawled in surgical handwriting. "Dear Miss Nightshade, I'll be seeing you. Dr. F." And somewhere in another quiet town, a new hospital sign went up overnight. Frankenhorror Memorial Center. Population infinity.